You are in the ladies' room with Dr. Donna, the only public ladies' room you can enter anytime without ever waiting online. I'm your host, Dr. Donna Moore. We'll be having real conversations with real women about really intimate issues. They may be embarrassing, sad, or funny, but they will always be interesting and informative. You know, like the best conversations you've had in ladies' rooms with your best friends, or total strangers and a physician. Please join us. Hello and welcome to the ladies' room. We have a great episode for you today. And I have to say, so far in this podcast series, we've discussed a wide range of women's health issues, diseases, disorders, conditions. We've discussed all stages of life, from in utero in pregnancy to menopause. And we've discussed many ways to approach a healthy lifestyle, whether it's by a healthy diet, healthy sleep patterns, or healthy fitness, and ideally all of the above. We've had many experts from the been there, done that perspective who've commented on every aspect of this. But today, we're going to focus on an attribute, resilience, and an attitude, gratitude. Yes, these are both very important and desirable character traits, but they are also traits which have both been associated in numerous medical studies with a wide range of positive health outcomes. Our next guest exemplifies both of these and many more. Now, though her genes caused her to have breast cancer twice and a medical tragedy caused her to become an amputee, nothing has stopped our next guest, Donna Hopkins, from living her life to the fullest. Feel like you need some inspiration? Well, you've come to the right interview, and you can also find it in her new book, Getting to the Other Side of Victory, where Donna talks about her incredible journey of perseverance and positivity. Donna is a West Virginia native, now living in Washington, D.C. She's a people person, a visionary, and a problem solver who is passionate about helping others. She is the founder and CEO of the nonprofit Hopkins Breast Cancer Incorporated, a public speaker for breast cancer awareness programs, and a sports personality. And we're going to hear more about that. Donna has intimate knowledge about life challenges that most of us will only read about. But rather than asking us to feel sorry for her, or for ourselves in our own crises, Donna reassures her readers that, quote, it is okay to cry about your circumstances, the devastation, destruction, and adversity, unquote. Sometimes. She says that the most important thing is to, quote, know that you're stronger than any pain you must go through. And she recommends tapping into that hidden strength to find what lies at the bottom of your heart and beats life back into you. Without further ado, please help me welcome Donna Hopkins. You are in the ladies' room. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, the pleasure is mine, and we have so much to talk about. So I am just going to jump right in and ask you, what motivated you to write this book?
Well, you know, I wrote it for myself, first of all, because I think that whatever you go through, you have to find healing first before you can pass it on to other people. So when I was in the hospital in 2010, going through that unforeseeable medical disaster, I called it, I ended up jotting down little notes and tidbits. And then I started writing in the book, start writing notes about a year after getting out of the hospital. But first of all, it was for my healing, to write in the book about going through the experience of being in the hospital, thinking that you just were going to walk to the hospital that day and we're going to be in and out in 5 days. And it's funny because I told some of my close friends, it's about 4 of us, that I was going to be walking to the hospital and it would be my last good walk for a minute. And little did I know those words would come back to be the truth, because I walked to the hospital and the way I walked when I left, I wasn't walking the same way out. I had the leg amputated. And I was like, God, you know what? When you go back and look at those emails that I send out just to friends that let them know I'm in the hospital for 5 days and I'm going to be right back out. But it turned out to be my last walk the way I knew it. And when I started writing and started jotting down things, it became a healing tool for me in the process, because I believe that, in the 8 years it took me to write this book, I would have cheated myself if I had stopped and wrote it and finished it up in 3 years, because the healing for me didn't come in the first 2-3 years in writing, because I jumped right back into everything.
Right.
But the healing came through the process of going through these 8 years and really getting to know myself all over again.
Well, everybody who's listening you've gripped us in, and everybody is screaming, what happened when you went to the hospital? First of all, who walks to the hospital? Second of all, why were you originally going to the hospital for 5 days? And what happened while you were there?
Yeah, so I did leave out some important details when I first started talking, left them hanging there. But I
know it's because you want us to read the book, but we got to know now. And the book is not even available yet.
Yeah, but soon.
We have to know now.
Yes, but I went to the hospital in 2010 for uterus fibroid tumors. They were the size of a softball. I had about 7 of them.
Wow.
I was chronically heavily bleeding through my cycles and everything. And so the doctor told me that they wanted me to get them removed, and they wanted to do a hysterectomy. Well, I didn't want to get a hysterectomy done because everything was okay, and I still wanted the window to be open to having kids. Mm-hmm. So I thought about it and pondered the surgery, and I said, you know what, let's just have the fibroid tumors removed, and then you know what, I don't have to worry about having the hysterectomy, because so many times women go through having a hysterectomy and don't have other options and so forth. And so they told me about some of the options, about the surgery and everything I thought was going to be easy going. And so I decided, I called my doctors up a week later before the surgery and said, you know what, I just don't want to have the hysterectomy. Let's just have the fibroid tumors removed. And we agreed upon that, not thinking anything was going to happen from there.
Did they explain to you that this is one of those things in medicine that just doesn't make sense intuitively, but did they explain to you that the surgery to remove the tumors is often more complicated than removing the whole uterus?
Well, you know what? I don't recall. I know that we went through some various options as far as having the fibroids removed, but I don't think, I must have missed that in my when they were explaining about this being complicated, because they said they would use a robot with the hands and everything, right, and they would go in and remove it. But they gave me other options about freezing it. But I never did think that it was to the point, and I don't think I got the total understanding of, you know what, having the uterus removed would be a better option because it could be some complications from that. And I believe that if I would have heard all of those things, and not saying that they didn't say it, but I think sometimes it's good to have other people to go in.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you if you have somebody go with you to your appointments. And even I, as a physician, when I'm the patient, it definitely helps me to have somebody with me to kind of be paying attention, because part of your brain is in denial.
Yes.
You don't want to deal with all of these potential complications. And part of your brain is freaking out, which is entirely expected. Now, do you mind if I ask you how old you were when you went for this procedure?
I was going to be turning 50. I was 49 and getting ready to be turning 50 at the end of the year.
Okay.
And I say to myself now that it is so important, and I mentioned this in the book, is to really learn every detail about your surgery. If I had to do it all over again and second guessing myself now, and I said, maybe I should have just had the hysterectomy done. But then the doctor said some of the same things could have happened to you.
Absolutely. And you never know. I'm going to just turn my light on a little bit because it looks like I'm a little dark here. You never know what's going to happen.
Yes.
And I know that I've been on both sides of this as a doctor and as a patient. And the process you're talking about is what we call giving informed consent. And
yes.
That's when we explain all the terrible things that could potentially happen. And we often give statistics and say what percent, likelihood this, that, or the other thing is. And when we hear things like there's a 1% chance of a certain outcome, we think, oh, that's nothing. But what I always tell people is the incidence is 100% if it happens to you.
Exactly.
And that's, what you really care about. All right. So tell us what happened.
Yeah. So I ended up going in the hospital and having the fibroid tumors removed, and everything went well as far as the first day or so. But the second day I ended up I think they thought I was internally bleeding, so they went back in. That's 2 surgeries in 2 days, and
Right.
that's tough in itself. And then they thought that and then we went in for another surgery. They didn't find anything where I was bleeding internally.
Mm-hmm.
So they went in for another surgery, maybe like a few days later. So that's 3 surgeries within less than 5 days.
Right.
And they thought that my upper intestines weren't working, and they couldn't find anything that was going on. And I was walking around the hospital. I was still, moving around, hadn't had a bowel movement. And that, that's some of the telltale signs that they want you to have before you were released. So
but you had 3 surgeries, which means you had 3 sets of general anesthesia. And general anesthesia can cause this risk of post-surgical constipation. Plus you weren't eating. And the irony is they don't let you eat until you go.
Yes.
But you can't go because you didn't eat.
Exactly. So it's almost like I was doing good and I was walking around, but all of a sudden I started to get sick, and I had let's just say this, I had a room of visitors. And sometimes I tell people that it's good not to have any visitors because your body is still trying to heal. Yeah. And I know all those people want to come up and kind of like visit you, but I just had 3 surgeries within 5-day period. And then you had these visitors, and it's all of a sudden I became sick, where I got nauseated, and they took me back. I think that's when they took me back in for the 3rd surgery. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I got really sick, where my foot started being numb, and my niece would rub my foot and the feeling would come back. But I kept complaining about numbness in my foot, and it started turning a little purple. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't figure out if it was a blood clot, because they were giving me heparin too. Okay. So I don't think I was being tested to see if I was clotting, but they knew it was almost like they couldn't find a blood clot. And the foot, they said, it's hard to find any clots in that because the veins and everything are so small. But the foot was.
But they were giving you heparin to prevent a blood clot.
Yes.
And yet you were having internal bleeding.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So the foot. So
I'm not liking this story.
No. I was getting heparin to prevent the blood clots. And to make a long story short, the heparin ended up causing the blood clots. And I ended up getting a blood clot that went up into my arm. And they tried to work that out, and I almost ended up dying. I can remember literally stop breathing. Mm. And they said that I was panicking and everything. And I have a thyroid disease too. So I don't know if I was getting my thyroid.
What is your thyroid condition?
It was an overactive thyroid, but years before that, maybe like a few years before that, I took the radioactive iodine, so it killed the thyroid. So I'm on Centroid. So I don't know if I was taking they would give me the right doses, but they said I had a kind of like a panic attack, but I don't know. All I know is on that table, when they were trying to clear out that blood clot in my arm, I literally couldn't breathe. And I remember grabbing the nurse's hands and saying, I cannot breathe. And I literally stopped breathing, and then they stopped working on the clot, but they ended up getting that taken care of. But they had to slice my legs open on the side to relieve some of the pressure. Mm-hmm. And they had a pulse and everything, but I was starting to swell. The foot was starting to turn purple. And by the time they realized that I had a hit from the heparin, it was too late to reverse the effects of that. And then I caught a staph infection when I got transferred to the 2nd hospital. So it was, I call it a medical hospital disaster.
So you had the amputation in the 2nd hospital.
2nd hospital.
It was because they couldn't control the infection, or because you had further blood clots?
Well, they couldn't figure out what was going on at the 1st hospital. They couldn't figure out that it was the heparin. They just stopped giving it to me. And they said that it was nothing else that they could do because it was beyond their control at that 1st hospital. Mm-hmm. So they switched me to a trauma hospital, mm-hmm. Probably 30 minutes away from that hospital. And by the time I got to that hospital, they were taking me in for another surgery, for my 5th surgery, because they said that they had to, they canceled other surgeries to get me in because they said that I was in a state of emergency. So they said that they may have to take out my hands too, because they were swollen like balloons.
Oh, yeah, my God.
I was in really bad shape by the time I got to the second hospital, and the doctor had told them, what the chances of going into surgery, that it could be gangrene where they had to amputate the foot. I could end up dying from this. It was a lot of things. So that the hands may have to come off if that, as far as the circulation. So they held off on that. But they did the surgery, and they didn't have to amputate at that moment. But I was still in critical condition, as far as I tell people, hanging on by a thread of life.
Well, we always say to our guests, we're so pleased that you're able to be here today. But in this case, we are really, really pleased that you're able to be here today. So did you have breast cancer before this, or the breast cancer came after this?
Yeah, the breast cancer came before. In 1997, I had my first bout with breast cancer. I had a reoccurrence in 1999. And I don't know all the medical, terminology behind the breast cancer and having to have radiation, but I know that anytime you have to have chemo radiation, it weakens your system some, and you're more acceptable to more things. And they said that this could have been possibly some of the effects of what happened to my body, because my dad has blood clot issues, but I got tested, which I don't. But it could be a combination of just all the surgeries that I had been through over the years with the breast cancer, because you're talking about reconstruction, breast cancer in 1997, the reconstruction surgery.
So you had a mastectomy?
Yes.
The second on one side or both sides?
One side.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
that was in the same side or in the opposite side? In
the same side. So it was in my right breast. It was in the upper quadrant the first time, and the lower quadrant the second time, closer to the chest wall. And I always tell people that it was because I acted quickly on going to the doctors and finding out. I found the lump myself in 1997.
And you were young.
Yeah, and only 36.
36. So this is really important for women to understand, because most doctors don't recommend mammograms to 40, but were you doing breast self-exam, or you just accidentally discovered it?
Accidentally discovered it at work. You know how you just kind of like
work
in your chest and everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? But the good thing is I was educated enough to know that something was there that shouldn't have been there. And I kept feeling it. And I was like, what is this little lump? And I always say that God manifested that lump being at the age that I was, because otherwise it wasn't time for me to get mammograms and everything, even though my mom comes from a family of 18.
Wow.
Siblings, and she's the baby.
My God.
Yeah, she only had a big family. I come from 10. She only had one sister that had breast cancer, but the second time around, I found out on my dad's side that it was breast cancer, with a bunch of my cousins on his side. So had I known that, I probably would have been getting checkups a little sooner, or would have been able to. But, I always tell people that know your family history, because the second time around, I dug a little deeper and I educated myself a little more. I think that we have to be more proactive as individuals with our own medical history and cases, that if I dug a little differently, probably when I had the amputation with the fibroid tumors and whatever, I would have probably made the decision just to have, at that stage of my life, knowing that chances of me having kids was like a long shot, but I would have said, you know what, knowing that a little more, I would have just said, let's do the hysterectomy. And not saying that it wouldn't have turned out, but at least I would have been saying my body wouldn't have gone through probably the trauma that it did, getting rid of those several large fibroid tumors.
Yeah, I think it's not helpful to do coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Yeah.
And I think that you have a bunch of important messages here. Certainly one is to know your family history, but on the other hand, the overwhelming majority of women who get breast cancer have no family history that they know of. But the most important point I think you mentioned is the importance of doing breast self-exam.
Yes.
And we talk about mammography a lot, because mammography is great at identifying breast cancers before we can feel them. But many women are in the category, such as yourself, where they discover a lump on their own. And this is particularly important for young women.
Yes.
Because we're not recommending mammograms for women under 40. And not only can you discover your own lump, but you can discover what is normal for you, what your
Yes.
body feels like. And then you can go to the doctor and say, this is not normal for me.
Yes.
Now, I personally have had a lump for many, many, many years that's totally benign. I think I had it since I was in medical school. And when I discovered it, of course, I freaked out immediately.
Right.
But I can
did
tell my
too.
doctor every single year, I've had this since I was 23. This is
Yes.
totally normal for me. And every time I have my mammogram, they, do an extra special look at that area, and it's nothing to worry about. But that's only because I know that. Now, the other thing I think that's really important about your situation is to let women know that African American women generally get breast cancer younger and
Yes.
more aggressively when they get it. So, that's a special shout out to African American women who are in their 30s to be doing breast self-exam, ideally every month after your period.
And please do not miss your doctor's appointments yearly, because I'm telling you, the second time around, when it was dormant the second time around, I was having all these twinges, and I was like, what is that? And they associated it possibly with the radiation. And I was like, and like you said, knowing your body, it was like, I'm not used to this, the twinges and the sharp pains, darting pains and so forth. And it was almost like it was dormant for that year, that it wasn't showing manifested itself on the mammograms or the ultrasounds. But the second year, if I hadn't been getting my mammograms year after year at the same time, because it was the same time I detected it in 1997, April in 1999, they wouldn't have found the breast cancer. I would have missed out on that year, and that year could have possibly made the difference because it was close to the chest wall. So my message always is, make sure that you go to your yearly checkups. It is
Absolutely.
important that you do not miss any of them, because saving your life and not saving your life is the key thing in those doctor's visits. Because my doctor said the second time around, because it was so close to the chest wall, it could have broken out. And although they caught it early, still, had I not been there that year at that time, then me talking to you today may have not been the case. And I found out just maybe like last year, and again, is having somebody go to the doctor with you. Because I'm telling you, I did not hear the doctor the first time in 1997 or 1999 say that you had aggressive breast cancer, Donna. Even though we caught it in the early stages, hearing that I had aggressive breast cancer would have made me make some decisions differently than I did. I would have had both breasts removed. I would have had I did the Brock test maybe like 3 years ago, because the doctor, my primary doctor, said, you already had cancer.
Right.
Well, guess what? It doesn't say that I had, the gene, because if I had that gene, I would have made different decisions pertaining to my medical
Did you wind
case.
up getting tested for BRCA1 and BRCA2?
I did, and I didn't carry the gene, so that was good. But I'm telling you, if I had known that I had aggressive breast cancer, I would have gotten the other breast removed, because I don't want to have that worry, and having it come back the first time and really reading up more about reoccurrences. I would, even though my doctor said, radiation is just good for you because we caught it early, I would have still said, I had aggressive breast cancer, even though it was caught early. I'm getting the other breast removed because I don't want that worry.
And your doctor still has you coming back every year or every 6 months?
Every year.
Okay. You might want to ask about that. And that's the other thing that's good about having somebody with you. And It might be a family member, it might be a sibling, it might be a girlfriend. But sometimes they think of questions that you might not think of until a week later. Or what we call the doorknob question. And that's the question you think of, oh, by the way, when your hand is on the doorknob to leave.
Yes.
So you have had a number of health challenges. You've had from thyroid disease to breast cancer twice, an amputation. How do you come out of that? I know some women fall apart if they get 3 zits on their face.
Yeah.
So how do you
come
out positive and smiling and cheerful and encouraging others on the other side of this situation?
Yeah, can I just add one more thing?
Absolutely.
Just last year when I went to my doctor's appointment, my yearly doctor's appointment, my mom had diabetes and so forth. And I promised myself going through life, I'm not going to get all those things because I'm going to do everything I possibly can to stay healthy. And that's not always the case because genes, you still have the genes of the family. And they had detected me of just last year being diabetic. And I said, nope, I can't receive that because I had all the whammies of the family and so forth. And I said, thank God that you're a healthy person, that you exercise and eat right and do all those things. But then I went to my endocrinologist and she said, now, it's important to go to those specialist doctors too, because come to find out that I wasn't diabetic yet, but it was pre-diabetic. And we could kind of like combat some things right there. Cause she said, if you hadn't been eating right and exercising and all those things, you combated this probably about 10 years, and genes are genes, but you're doing the right things so that it doesn't come about. But to answer your question, in how do you keep positive? How do you keep going? How do you get to the other side of victory after being hit time and time again with so many medical problems and so forth that, make you look at life a little differently. But I'm always a person, and I always tell people I'm the most competitive person ever that you would find. Got involved in sports, went to college on scholarships.
Oh, for what sport?
Basketball and track.
Okay.
Yeah, and so after I went through the amputation, my PT person said, I think you should get involved in rowing. And I said, I don't even know how to swim, but it was the medicine that I needed.
Then you have to learn not to fall out of the boat.
Exactly. Even with a life jacket, I would have freaked out. But
You're talking to a college varsity swimmer, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I really
take no scholarships in my day.
Yeah, so it's been the things that I've got, like being in sports and going through sports and competing and everything. I had that competitive person in me, that person that doesn't like to win, that person that
doesn't like to lose.
Yeah, that doesn't like to lose. I got to keep
you honest here.
Yeah, that doesn't like to lose. And I use that mentality as an athlete to get me through some of the hardest things in life, because I believe that as an athlete, you work hard, you work with a team, you put in the work, that the necessary things to be a winner. And so I turned that around to be a winner in life also, because when I went through cancer, I said, I'm not losing this battle. And I was like, and I'm not losing this battle to the amputation or any of those things that I have gone through. And then it's been my faith in God. I was brought up in the church, and my mom, then we believe that, in the relationship with God and him, my faith and that relationship, I think the competitive nature and the sports and my faith and believing that God was going to see me through, those are the things I think that propelled me to the other side of victory. And also, I always say that whatever beats life into your spirit, whatever makes you leap, whatever add that spark back into your life, that is the thing that you should tap into, because that is going to get you to the other side. Because I told someone it would have been a shame to have gone through 2010, almost losing my life, having the amputation, made it through there and lived through that, and then get out the hospital and die, physically, emotionally, and spiritually to that. Guess what? I had already, won the toughest battle by just surviving what my body went through, and almost a death call. And then to get out the hospital and get stuck in what you've been through. I always say that you can never go back and change anything that you've gone through. You can learn from it, but if you keep looking back and going back into that, and like you said, those what ifs, what
shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah, you can never do that because it'll keep you stuck. But I told someone, I don't want that to be the anchor that takes me down and I'm not being able to get back up and move forward. So I've tapped into the most important things that adds joy and makes my spirit leap and puts a smile on my face. I'm this happy-go-lucky person anyway, but when you go through something that devastating, even that will wipe a smile off your face. But I kept pressing. I kept, like you said, that winning attitude, because I don't like to lose. And I tapped into those things. So I tell people, what is it that will get you to the other side? What got me there may not be what gets you there, but you have to tap into that reservoir and find out what's the thing to add passion and purpose back into your being. That's what you should be using to get you to the other side of victory.
And how did sports figure into that then for you? You had lost your leg. I assume it was below the knee?
Yes, below the knee.
Thank God.
Yes.
So that makes a big difference in terms of your mobility and what you're able to do. But I saw these amazing photographs of you running up and down the Capitol steps and, doing all kinds of physical accomplishments. So tell us what sports activities you're doing now and able to do and enjoying.
Yeah, the funny thing about the amputation, my mom, I didn't even get to make that decision about having my leg amputated because I was too sick at that moment. But they had told my mom had told the doctors, well, she's an athlete. I mean, she's active and whatever. She would not want, because they could have saved part of the foot and maybe the infection would have ended up coming back. And they just wanted to take out the question marks of, let's just amputate it at this point, because it came close to being amputated up above the knee, but they were able to save that. So my mom made that decision and everything, and she made it for me, knowing who I was as a person. So I got involved in rowing after the amputation, never had done it before. I got involved in wheelchair basketball and track and field. Now, the thing about getting involved in wheelchair basketball, it frustrated me a little bit.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I actually played wheelchair basketball when I was in medical school. They had this team that was a wheelchair basketball team, and they challenged the able-bodied medical students to a game. And the purpose from the point of view of the medical school is it was supposed to show us, not only the challenges that people who are differently abled have, but also what incredible athletes they are.
Yes.
So this was really, really hard for us.
It was, because you know what? We challenged the George Mason men's basketball.
Oh my God, you did? Did you win?
And they came up, thinking that, okay, we play college ball, we got scholarships.
We won the championship a few years ago.
And they said, you know what? It gave them a greater appreciation of what goes into playing wheelchair basketball and how difficult it is and the skill set it is versus upright. But it frustrated me because I had something to recall from when I was upright. Right. And because I couldn't do some of those same things and whatever, it was fun because I played wheelchair tennis too. And I played upright tennis also. So those sports that I was familiar with, it kind of like was tough because it made me remember, because memory is some things that will haunt you. Yeah. But I ended up saying, okay, that's fun and whatever. But somebody, like I told you, my PT girl said, get involved in rowing. Nothing.
Good for her. Good for her.
Yeah.
Nothing, no memories, no association.
No association. Had a rough coach. So I told them, I said, me being the competitor I am, I said, sure, why not? Got out there, great sport. It really was medicine that I needed at that time. I rowed for 4 years, tried to compete in the Paralympics. Ended up not making it in the Paralympics, but I ended up having great relationships with people who were amputee. Well, actually, I probably was one of the only amputees, but it was other, disabilities that people had that we rowed with. And I rowed in regattas and won regattas and, traveled with the rowing team. So it was such a great experience. I told somebody, I thought my basketball coach in college was the toughest person ever. It was that Paralympic rowing coach that I rowed for the National Rehabilitation Center. He was so rough. And I was like, gosh, I used to wear sunglasses all the time saying, I hope he can't see what I'm doing. And it was like, oh my gosh, he's difficult. But you know what? He was the kind of coach that I liked too, even though he was rough. So I rowed, and then I ended up playing tennis for a while. And then in just before the Paralympics, the summer ones, someone saw me running at a running clinic in DC, and I ran one in New Jersey, and they said, I think you should run. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm in the wrong sport. This may get me there because I had my running leg and I had been running, and I said, maybe that's the sport that will get me to the Paralympic. So I started training late for that. and ended up missing out making the Paralympics trials by 0.33 seconds in the 100. But it was a great experience because I met great people. I remember talking to this young girl that was an amputee. She was only 10 years old. She was running against us adults and everything. And she said, I'm going to lose and whatever. I said, no. She said, I'm afraid. I said, me too. I said, I'm afraid to go out here too, but we're going to go out here together and you're going to run the best that you could possibly run, not competing against us, but the best that you can run for yourself. And that's all I can do also.
Yeah, and that's what's great about running as a sport is because it's an individual sport and it's you against the clock.
Yeah. So I told her, don't look at competing against us and everything. The most important thing I think that I want people to just know, I think that I come up in contact with is, and that when I was in running that time, is that you can only do the best that you can possibly do. And if that means that, I told her, if your time was 14.0 seconds that time and you knocked off 3 seconds off of that, then guess what? You improved.
Or 3/10 of a second.
Or 3/10 of a second.
Or 3/100 of a second. So let's address the elephant in the room here.
Yes.
You're somebody who has returned to sports after having breast cancer twice and an amputation, but how old are you?
57 now.
So most women who are 57 who have no medical problems and no amputations and no thyroid problem are sitting on the couch, and they're lucky if they get to the gym twice a week or to Zumba class, and they're not competing in sports. So I think the other message here is that age should not be a barrier.
No.
Now, in the Paralympics, I'm not that familiar with their structure. Is it all ages competing against each other, or is there a master's division?
Yeah, it's a master's division on down. I think when you get to be 60, but before then,
3 more years.
Yeah, 3 more years, and I'll be back. But you know what? In training for track and field and rowing, I tore my good knee, if that's what you want to call it. I tore the meniscus in both sides of the knee and everything. So my surgeon said, Donna, maybe you should think about retiring. And I was like, told people, I was like, that is not even in me, but maybe not on that top level like that, but still sports just beats in my spirit.
Okay, so maybe it's time for you to learn to swim.
I'm taking classes.
There you go.
Yeah,
I think that's such an important part of not only recovery, but also being joyful and positive and passionate and energetic, is that you have reinvented yourself several times. And you're continuing, not that 57 is old, because I will be 57 in a couple of months, but you are still learning new things. And I think that is really important for vitality, is to you stay young by continuing to grow.
I think so too.
And I think the other thing that you said earlier about, not focusing on the past and the woulda, coulda, shouldas, is that everything that has ever happened to you in your life, everything that's happened to you and everything that you have done has led you to this point where you are today.
Yes.
And I could talk to you all day long, but we are going to have to wrap it up. But before I let you go, a couple of things that we ask all of our guests. One of my favorite questions, because this is called In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donna, is, what was the most unique, memorable, or interesting experience you ever had in a ladies' room?
In the ladies' room?
In the ladies' room.
I think just laughing and enjoying the conversation of two individuals that have some things in common, no things in common, but when you come together, it's a togetherness. It's almost like a sisterhood. Mm-hmm. And I just have enjoyed just sharing stories and with the audience and in the ladies' room, that I think that we can all reflect on some parts of it that we would say, yeah, that's me.
That's me. And that's exactly why I started this podcast, was because of all of those interactions and conversations I have had over the years in the ladies' room. Please tell our audience the name of your book, and when. The most important thing is, when can we get it?
Yes, it's called Getting to the Other Side of Victory, and it's a book, no matter what age, what male or female, it will be able to help anybody that's going through anything. It's a book that you'll be able to laugh at. It'll be a book that you can be educated on, and it'll be a book that you can push yourself through anything that you're facing. It's going to come out, and you'll be able to purchase it at the end of February in probably about a couple of weeks, and they can go to my website at www.donnajhopkins.com, and I'm giving tidbits of the book almost like every week, something that you're going to learn that's going to make you want to pick up that book, because it's going to enrich your life.
Well, we are going to recommend it to everybody, and we will link to it from our podcast. And I cannot wait to personally read it, because I have to say, you have already inspired me to get back into the gym myself. This morning I was feeling a little cranky, and I was saying, okay, if she could do it, I could do it.
I'm going to learn how to swim when we next talk.
Next time I talk to you, I want to hear about it. Anyway, Donna, it has been such a pleasure meeting you and having you here in the ladies' room and having this great talk. I know our listeners are going to be really inspired by you, and I wish you the best of luck with the book tour.
Yes.
And with your swim lessons.
Yes.
And I expect that the next time the Paralympics comes around, you will be going for it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care and stay well.
Right. Bye.
Bye.
That's all we have time for today. But let's keep the conversation going on Twitter or Facebook at Dr. Donica. And please join us next week for another episode of In the Ladies' Room with Dr. Donica. Real conversations with real women about really intimate topics.